Hi, I'm Maya, and today I want to talk about Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is set in 1980s Malibu, and it centers around four siblings, Nina, Jay, Hud, and Kit. They're the children of an incredibly famous singer named Mick. Nina is a famous model, and Jay is a famous surfer. Hud is a photographer, and Kit is still trying to figure out what she wants to do. They're getting ready for their annual end of summer party. We know from the prologue that the party will end in a fire, and so much happens between the first chapter and the fire at the end. There are so many flashbacks and so much is revealed about this family and what they've been through. The prologue is so gripping. It instantly gets your attention and you're dying to know what happens. As I was reading this book, it reminded me of the TV show This Is Us. Family drama, multi-generational, heartbreaking, gut-wrenching, emotional roller coaster. Makes you cry, both sad and happy tears. Mick, the father, is the literal worst. He's awful. He's selfish, he cheats on his wife, he abandons his children, and he gives his family false hope and then lets them down. He only thinks about his own wants and needs. He left his children when they were young, so they don't know him at all. But at the same time, he's the most famous man in the world, so they know him very well. And that sentiment is expressed here. Mick Riva's career, rocky tabloid headlines, a new hit album, a sold-out world tour, had taken off like a rocket, leaving hordes of young women screaming his name, millions of car radios playing his music as they sped down the freeway. And so, to his children, he was both inescapable and never there. The relationships and dynamics in this book are really well written. Between Mick and June, his first wife and the mother of his 4 children. Between June and her parents, who warn her to not get swept up in Mick's flashiness. Between June and her children. Between each of the siblings and their individual friends and love interests. And most importantly, between the 4 siblings. Basically, every type of human relationship is in this book. And in describing these relationships, Taylor Jenkins Reid presents many observations about human nature. Here's an example. Too much self-sufficiency was sort of mean to the people who loved you, Kit thought. You robbed them of how good it feels to give. Those sentences are a good indicator of the role that Nina plays in her family. She's the oldest and she's always taken care of her siblings. There has always been so much responsibility on her shoulders. And Kit, Jay, and Hud wish that Nina would rest and let them help her. So that's pretty much all I can say without getting into spoilers, and I really want to talk about spoilers. So if you don't want to know what happens, stop watching. Okay, so reading the last few chapters, my heart was racing the entire time. And after I finished reading, my hands were shaking. It was insane. The whole time I was terrified that Nina was going to die. I thought history was going to repeat itself. June's husband left her and she died in water. She was so depressed about Mick leaving her that she became an alcoholic and drowned in the bathtub when her kids were still in high school. So they faced most of their life as orphans. And Nina's husband left her, so I thought she was going to die in fire. But she didn't, and I'm so glad. Although I guess she did die in a way. It was the death of her life in Malibu. No more modeling, no more fame. And people assume that she died in the fire that burned down her house. And from the ashes, she builds a new life for herself in Portugal, in an area where no one knows her, and she can finally have the peace and quiet she deserves. I love that Jay and Hud made up in the end. They got into that big fist fight, and there was so much sibling rivalry going on. But at the end of the day, no matter how mad they get, they are brothers and they love each other and they'll always be there for each other. And Jay had a heart condition that he didn't tell anybody about. He was hiding it and I was really worried that he was going to die. When he got into that fist fight with Hud, I was so scared that the strain was going to be too much on his heart. But he was okay, and that made me breathe a sigh of relief. I loved watching Kit come into her own. As the baby of the family, she always felt like she was kind of just tagging along and was often overlooked. But she is a very talented surfer, and I'm glad that people acknowledge that at the end. I also love how sassy and funny Kit is. I love how bold she is and how she's not afraid to call people out. In that way, she's very different from Nina, who likes to smooth things over and keep everyone happy. And I admire Nina a lot for how self-sacrificing she is and how she keeps her family together. She dropped out of high school to work full-time and take care of her siblings. and she got custody of her siblings so that they wouldn't be separated and put into foster homes. So Nina is incredibly strong and noble, and I love her a lot. But I think Kit is my favorite of the siblings, because her bluntness and honesty are so refreshing in this story full of lies and secrets. This book is so good because it asks the big questions. Nature versus nurture. Are we programmed to be like our parents? Do we have total control over our lives, or does fate play a bigger role? Nina ponders that here. Family histories repeat, Nina thought. For a moment, she wondered if it was pointless to try to escape it. Maybe our parents' lives are imprinted within us. Maybe the only fate there is the temptation of reliving their mistakes. Maybe, try as we might, we will never be able to outrun the blood that runs through our veins. Or maybe we are free the moment we're born. Maybe everything we've ever done is by our own hands. Nina wasn't sure. And later, Hud thinks about similar themes. History repeating itself and chance versus choice. These questions are an even bigger deal for him, because it's revealed that June is not his mother. He is the son of Mick and another woman. But June took him in and loved him anyway. June has such a big heart, and her story is so sad. But back to Hud and his thoughts. Toward the end of the book, we learn that Hud's girlfriend is pregnant. And in this part I'm going to read, he's thinking about becoming a father. And maybe 25 years from now, all of them, plus a whole new generation of Rivas, would be right here on this very beach. And maybe there would be another reckoning. Perhaps his children would tell him he'd been too permissive, or he'd been too strict. He'd put too much emphasis on X when it should have been on Y. He smiled to think of it, the ways in which he would mess this whole thing up. It was inevitable, wasn't it? The small mistakes and heartbreaks of guiding a life. His mother had screwed up almost as much as she'd succeeded. But the one thing he knew in his bones was that he would not leave. His child, his children, if he was lucky, would know from the day they were born that he was not going anywhere. I love how determined Hud is to make sure that the cycle ends with him, and that he will not abandon his children. One part of the book that I thought was weird was that towards the end, we're introduced to a character named Casey, who may or may not be Mick's daughter with another woman. It's implied that Mick probably has a lot of children that he doesn't know about. This is important because it shows what a careless, irresponsible person he is. But it also feels like Casey is interrupting this important moment when the four siblings are confronting their father on the beach. Casey just feels sort of out of place to me, like we'd been building to this moment from the beginning of the book, and suddenly an outsider is here. Someone who doesn't have the same history and memories and trauma as the other siblings, and who doesn't have as much of a stake in this confrontation. It just felt sort of strange to me. But I do love that the Riva siblings instantly welcomed Casey into their family. That shows how loving and big-hearted they are. And it shows that they're carrying on June's legacy of compassion and adoption, and I think she would be very proud of how they treated Casey. My favorite part of the book, hands down, was when Nina finally told off Mick. He had the audacity to come to their party, and he expected things to be totally normal, and for his children to instantly forgive him. But that's not what happened. He had a very rude awakening. Nina finally told him all the things I'd been dying for her to tell him. Things that Mick needed to hear. And Nina finally did it. She finally said it all, and I was so proud of her. This book is emotionally exhausting. It's so detailed and so well written and so real. I love it a lot. I really enjoyed reading it. It's a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. Thank you so much for watching.